Mr. Barrett, go ahead, please, for 5.
Okay, my question is for the Deputy Consul General, Mr. McCubing. You signed off on the purchase of this property on Billionaires Row for Justin Trudeau's media buddy, Tom Clark. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was delegated authority from the Property Bureau and headquarters to provide the wet signature on the transaction.
Are you aware if in relation to this transaction and its approval and your subsequent signature, if there was any correspondence with the Prime Minister's office, the Privy Council office, or the Minister for Global Affairs office?
I'm not aware of any communication between any of those agencies.
Okay.
And our office.
So there was no. You weren't given any visibility on communications with the Minister's Chief of Staff in the form of a heads up on this?
No, I was not involved with that communication.
How did you know that you were to sign it?
I was provided an email with a delegated letter authorizing me to sign the contract.
And who was the email from?
It was from my colleagues in the Property Bureau, the Director General in charge of real property.
Okay. Was Mr. Clark informed of that a decision had been taken to pivot from a renovation to a property purchase?
Mr. Clark was aware that there was a process ongoing to find a new official residence. Did
Mr. Clark ever opine, or are you aware of him ever offering any opinion on the suitability of the residence that's to be disposed of?
Sorry, pardon me, Mr. Chair. Mr. Clark never opined to me about the disposal of the current residence. So,
and further to my question, did he ever speak about the suitability or his comfort at the the residence that's being sold?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Clark never shared with me his thoughts on the suitability of the current residence.
But you weren't. Are you aware of him expressing any opinion on it?
I am not personally aware of Mr. Clark having shared any opinion on the current residence.
And was he read in on any of the options for the now purchased residence or during that process?
No, Mr. Clark was not aware of any of the options and was not part of the process to look at any of the options.
Are you familiar with the space that's shared by your office and the ambassador to the United Nations?
Yes, I'm familiar with the Chancery building and the shared space.
Is it your opinion that that's a suitable place to hold meetings with trade officials and dignitaries?
We have, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we've host many different types of meetings at the shared space at the Chancery.
What's the highest level of dignitary or the highest individual in the order of precedence who has been party to a meeting in that space?
We have had meetings with ministers, not part of the consulate work, but the Prime Minister has had meetings in this office.
Okay. Have you had any ambassadors there?
Not on the consulate general side, so I couldn't speak to that, but I understand on the United Nations side.
Are you aware in the shared space of there being any ambassadors participating in meetings there?
In the shared space, I understand that ambassadors on the United Nations side participate in meetings.
Yeah, so I just find it very interesting, about the value, and we're going to run short on time here, but I just really like to know about the added value that Canadians who are working who are working in Victoria by the Sea, Prince Edward Island, or in Victoria, British Columbia, or in Windsor or Toronto, or in Sudbury or Sault Ste. Marie, who are struggling to pay their bills. What added value do they get for this? When we have a meeting space, we're told that we need this new $9 million residence for Tom Clark, Justin Trudeau's buddy on Billionaire Row, because the meeting space was insufficient. But the space that you have has hosted prime ministers, ambassadors, and all order of people. What's the added value for Canadians who can't pay their rent and for the 1 in 4 Canadians who are going to food banks?
I'm afraid there's no time for a response. Mr. Longfield, we'll go over to you, please, for 5.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for providing such detailed information to us and for helping us with our responsibilities as members of Parliament. As a member of Parliament, I've used a few councillor offices in Ottawa, and many Canadians won't know the purpose of councillor offices, and I could speak to what maybe part of my experience with councillor offices, and then maybe Mr. Allen can help fill in on how this could benefit Canadians. Previous to being a member of Parliament, I was managing director of a United Kingdom company in Canada, and when I was elected, I went to the UK Council to meet with him at the residence with other MPs to talk about the trade relationship we have between the UK and Canada, one of our most important trading partners. And I've been to the councillor office for the Netherlands, where they have expertise in clean technology, and Guelph is quite involved with climate change initiatives, clean technology companies. And to know that we have a route to the Netherlands through Ottawa, through the councillor office that's on the ground here. I'm also picturing the American elected officials using councillor offices in the same way to have a route into potential trade partners for their constituents. Maybe, Mr. Allen, could you talk about how elected officials in the United States might benefit from this New York location? And given the NAFTA negotiations that we've just gone through and will be going through again soon, changes in government, changes in political climate, trying to add to business stability by face-to-face communications, could you maybe comment on the significant strategic importance of having on-the-ground councillor services for elected officials to use?
Absolutely. So our network of missions abroad really represent the totality of Canadian interests in each of the cities and regions where they're located. So we've talked about the trade and investment side of that, the public affairs side of that, the consular services side of that. But I think also importantly, they build our brand around the world and show. And you've used examples like clean tech, which also apply to Canada. I mentioned critical minerals, and so I think we're lucky as a country to have a very positive brand abroad, but it takes work, as I say, to continue to promote that. So in representing the totality of our interests, they also provide an important sort of place, a meeting place for international interlocutors from the commercial world, as we say, from institutions. And really, I think there, despite the networked world that we are increasingly living in, there's absolutely no substitute for that face-to-face communication, which is really the business of diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, social media is what it is. I mean, email communications, even me attending not in person, creates a distance between me and the people that we're talking to. It's second best to face-to-face. I'm looking at Canada's exports of goods and services. Our exports increased 4.4% in June. Imports rose 1.8% in June. So our balance of trade did quite well in June, and I think we've shown over the past several months an increase in our exports to international partners. When I'm working with the small businesses in Guelph, last week I was at a wheelchair manufacturer in Guelph, and I said, have you considered our trade services and use Canada Business app so that you could get in touch with our trade services, because you could export these goods, not just serving our local and the Canadian community, but you've got world-class products here. So small businesses need those connections either through the Canada Business app, but the face-to-face that our offices can provide. Could you maybe comment on any of the face-to-face opportunities that you've witnessed at this office in New York?
Absolutely. So our trade commissioner service, who are based in our overseas platform, including in New York, are directly responsible for opening doors on behalf of Canadian exporters and providing critical market intelligence to help them really seal deals in economies all around the world, and including in New York. I also mentioned the investment attraction kind of raison d'être.
I apologize, Mr. Allen, but he did not leave you much time to answer. But
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Allen.
more than
Thank you,
welcome to perhaps finish it in writing to committee. I think it'd be appreciated. Mrs. Vignola, please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cousineau, generally, we receive remarks in written form. This morning, unless I had a problem with my iPhone, which of course is a possibility, I did not receive the comments. Could we please get your comments in written form? Mr. Speaker, I do think we sent my remarks to the committee, so I hope that you will be receiving these remarks shortly. That's great news. Thank you.
Pardon?
We did receive them at the very last minute.
Ah, OK. Good. Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Inaudible for the interpreter. Mr. Genus discussed the co-op rules. Is the Government of Canada part of the board that makes decisions about the co-op in the Steinway? Yes. Canada is represented because we now have presence in that building. Thank you. That's it for now.
Thank you, Mrs. Vignola. Mr. Bachrach, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll pick up where I left off in the last round with the question around risk associated with the future value of the property and whether Global Affairs took note of some of the challenges the developers had selling units in the associated building that the annex is attached to, and just what their evaluation was of risk associated with future valuation of the property.
Thank you very much for the questions. As mentioned in the beginning, we got a professional appraisal on this from PSPC, which is part of the process. And also we have leveraged the private sector real agent that have been actually helping us to identify what the market was all about and the current state of that market on which the price was established. So we believe that with these two elements, we have mitigated the risk as we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Was the risk assessed as being low in terms of future value of the property? I understand that information is in the very lengthy appraisal that the committee's been provided with. But in brief, does Global Affairs feel that, from an investment perspective, that this is a solid investment that's going to appreciate over time, or are there risks that Canadians should be concerned about?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the question. Given the value money we're looking for, that's a really important one, and I'll turn to Mr. Dubois to respond to the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. One of the risks is always associated with the financials, and that one of the variables that we have identified in the business process in the development of the business case does not materialize the way we anticipated that it would be. Our cost estimators are really prudent in not assuming that the market appreciation would be too high on that unit. But the facts that we have are two things. Is we know that on the old properties that we're selling, the market has given us a significant return on investment over the years, about 10% or more. and we anticipate that in the long run, the Manhattan market will give us a good investment moving forward, and that's supported by our real estate broker opinions.